Hi everybody, it's lovely to be here and I've got some slides to show you. I'm a ceramicist, but I'm a conceptual ceramicist. So I've been doing ceramics for a long time, over 30 years. And it was really lovely to go for a walk today and remind myself, I really love nature and spend a lot of time in nature. And it was just a lovely day to go for a walk and see all the different oxides and effects in the mountainside. And it just reminded me a lot of about the work that I did prior to the current work I'm doing, which I haven't got any colouring at all, actually. So this is, I graduated from Cardiff University back in 1988. And at that time, I threw pieces of artwork, ceramic work, amphoras, and I used a glaze called raku, which is really quite spectacular, originated from the Japanese tea ceremony. And you put a thick glaze on your work, and you put it in a kiln and you take it out at about 1,000 degrees and immerse it into some sort of combustible material. And you get these amazing effects because the oxides reduce and oxidize. And as you can see from this slide here, this was my second year on my degree, I wasn't really satisfied with just having clay. I like to combine materials. I've got a bandage here soaked around this piece, and I've also enjoy just finding pieces of metal and putting it in my pieces of artwork. When I graduated in 1988, I was really lucky. I went to Japan for 2 years, and in my 50s now, I often reflect on that experience. Because as someone who's got a degree in MA in ceramics, you're often sort of a little bit constrained about getting it right, the technical aspect right. But I often think about the Japanese philosophy in that you allow the process to dictate rather than trying to control it. And that's very much part of the tea ceremony. So this piece here is that's quite well received in Japan. In Japan, ceramics is a high art form. So what we'd get something like £50 for here, you get, like a lot more, like 500 pounds for. So it was a really formative, amazing experience. And I enjoyed combining, as you can see, at this time my work was based around the amphora, which is thrown in 2 parts and has different types of coloured glazes on. But then I would present them in different ways. And I often work with other artists to if I give them an amphora, they would come up with a design to put them in. So I was in Japan for 18 months, and I sort of got the travelling bug. So I came back to North Wales, it's where I was brought up. And then I organised to go to New Zealand, Australia and Thailand. And what I did when I organised this is to have workshops and produce my artwork and exhibit it, and then move on to the next country, which again was an amazing experience. And I was able to exhibit my work in quite good galleries, and it was just really nice to have that experience. As you can see from this piece of artwork, I, instead of using ceramics, I started using glass, which is quite similar to ceramics. And I just sort of made a plaster mould and allowed the glass, it was actually just an old wine bottle of some sort, or sherry bottle, and I just slumped it into the mould, and then again made a metal stand for it. So this was my formative years, really. So I was enjoying traveling, working with other artists, and seeing a bit of the world. This is an exhibition I had in Chiang Mai, which is southern Thailand, and I also was able to work with another artist, Suat, and this is a lovely studio I worked at, where they didn't have electricity, so the wife used to rotate the wheel and the husband would work on it. So it was a fantastic experience, really. And I did that for about 4 years. This is a painter I worked with, and I gave him, actually this is a plaster amphora, and he painted on it and I made the stand. So I quite enjoyed that. So after that, when I came back home in 1995, I did an MA again in Cardiff. I really enjoyed my time at Cardiff. And so I went back to do my MA, and I was sort of quite reflective, really, of the experience I'd have travelling. And I was looking very much at gender identity at that time, and how different roles form on female and male, and how people really got it to work, really. And obviously it's quite different in different cultures. So my MA in Cardiff was all about gender identity. So from there, I went on to having the whole form, but then segmenting it, so there was bits missing, if you like. And when you look at this piece of work and the previous pieces of work, you obviously it's very minimal. I don't really use colour at all anymore, but then it's not that dissimilar, actually, because I haven't actually applied the raku. It's actually happened itself. So I've never really used colour. I've allowed colour to happen, or this piece of work not happen at all. So this is one of my current pieces of work, where I'm sort of lifting up the pieces. So instead of just being flat and forming the torso, I've lifted up so it's some pieces are higher. So I had my daughter in 2001. And so I had to really change my lifestyle, really, to accommodate her, because with all the best will in the world, we do have to survive. And I was surviving on very little when I was traveling, but I didn't feel that I should inflict that on my daughter, this sort of lifestyle of semi-poverty, really, or not really knowing where the next money is going to come from. So at that stage in 2001, I was very lucky. I was working in a private school as a artist in residence, and they just so happened to ask me if I wanted to become a teacher. So I taught for 20 years, and it was really interesting. I developed a way of teaching in which, I very much focus on the individual's acquiring skills and then using those skills to express themselves. So it was a really enjoyable time. But then in 2019, my daughter went to university. So I felt at that stage I could really stop having to work full time and focus back on my artwork. And so I came back to North Wales and opened a studio. And part of my identity is very much as someone who loves the countryside. And it was very interesting coming back to North Wales. I've mentioned this before, having been away for a long time. Having been away for a long time, obviously when I'm abroad, like in New Zealand, Australia, Thailand, Japan, I don't come back regularly. But when I was down south or Cumbria, I used to come back about 3 times a year, because I've got a lot of family in the Conway Valley. So it's not like I completely lost touch with it, but it was very, very different coming back and living here. And I think we've discussed that before. And my work changed. I started to become very interested in text and how text is applied as a sort of pattern, and I was playing around with negative shapes and positive shapes, and I looked at artists called Mira Shindell for quite a lot of inspiration, and built a studio in Glen Conway. Then I was lucky to be given an artist in residency in Giggleswick, but unfortunately that came to a very swift end when COVID came about, so I only did half of it. After that, I was just last year, 2021, I was very lucky to be given a Welsh Arts Council grant, and there was a theme to it. So the theme that I looked at was COVID. And so I did a body of work, again, very much in what I wanted to do, looking at text and exploring different ways, really. It was making new artwork. So they wanted us to make, there was, I think it was 6 artists all in all, and they wanted us to make a new body of work. So that was perfect, really, because coming back to North Wales and setting up my studio, and then I had this support. It was a fantastic opportunity. I got mentors and the opportunity to make my own work, or whatever I wanted to make. So I made quite, I spent that time exploring different ways of adding text to clay. I've done a little workshop today where we've gone out, we pressed clay into old bricks actually, and then we've been exploring these sort of impressing them into clay. So that's where I was very much. And then I spoke to one of the mentors, and she was saying, well, you know, what are your passions? And your passions should be incorporated into your artwork. And from a very early age, from about as long as I can remember, really, I've been very concerned about consumerism. I'm quite an active part of the Green Party. And from the age of 7, really, I couldn't quite understand how we were making all this waste and where it was going to go. And I was quite a worried little child, really, about these sort of things. And I've, you know, throughout my life, I've tried to do the right thing, but it's very difficult, isn't it? And we've had conversations before about, you know, the part artists can play in alerting people to the terrible conditions and the concerns, you know, that the planet is in the process of well, all the damage and the destruction and the consumerism and the really, you know, the destruction of our planet, really. So rather than just doing COVID, I wanted to incorporate into my work aspects of COP26, and this was when I was making my work, when that was actually in process. And, you know, for me, they're not separate. You know, the way we're treating the world at the moment, I mean, there's going to be repercussions, and as we've spoken on several occasions, I mean, the role of artists, I mean, we're usually not sort of quite, you know, very bombastic people. We can talk about it subtly, or you know, we can really yell and shout. If we yell and shout about it, we might turn people off. I also do a lot of secondary teaching, and the poor secondary students do have a lot of this pushed on them. But I do think it's best now to be looking for solutions. So that's where my work's gone now. This is my current work. I'm looking at places in North Wales, particularly, which are, I feel, very spiritual. I'm looking at text in particular. And when I did this piece, it was just reminded me of, you know, writing, industrial writing. And sometimes when you go into environments, you see sort of echoes of post sort of industrial aspects of the landscape. So I'm sort of producing these very thin paper sheets. This one is actually a slip, and using sort of words on it. This is actually for my previous project on COVID, but going forward, I'm lucky to have a few exhibitions, and I'm trying to sort of convey, and by repeating it several times. I know as a teacher you have to do that quite a lot. Just using text sort of to convey my concerns about how we're treating the planet, and also drawing attention to sort of spiritual places. We spoke, the people that were listening into Matilda's talk yesterday, about sort of energy of places and spirituality. So I'm trying to sort of encapsulate that, which is quite a big thing to do. This is writing that's, I found it really interesting. It's not my writing, it's actually on a gravestone, I think, and it's sandstone that's been worn away. But I just love the sort of suggestion of, you can't quite read it, and the beautiful tones you're getting from it too. Go ahead. So this is one of the projects I'm working on. This is a fantastic church, and there's so many places in North Wales, similarly to where we went today, that are very, very special. They've got a sense of history and spirituality, and sort of there's an energy there. I don't know, I can't find the correct word, but I'm sure people that love nature will have their special places they go to, and you can go there and sort of be refreshed or nourished. So this is one of the places for me that definitely has that sense of sort of identity. I think we touched on this yesterday, the people finding their identity, either coming back or perhaps they've, you know, I actually went to Japan, and oddly, really oddly, I had a sense of going back to Japan. There's lots of things like the smell of rice cooking was very, very, it triggered off lots of memories for me. And also the wind through bamboo. You know, when you hear the wind going through trees at night, I love it, especially in North Wales. Often you get trees around and you get that lovely sound of wind blowing through trees. It's a different sound of wind blowing through bamboo and the tatami and everything. So oddly, I had a sense of identity in Japan. And I obviously definitely have it in Wales. And this is one of the places that I'm identifying with. And there's this amazing writing on the walls, and it's Old Welsh. And I haven't had it translated yet, but I am getting in contact with the local, well, I've been in contact with the local vicar, and he's going to help me translate it. And I really want to research more into that. And I think this sort of text would work really well in the work I'm doing at the moment. And also it's sort of, you know, like we've spoken before, really, like when you really identify with a place, we've spoken about picking up rocks and, you know, you going through it, or you visit it a lot. I think sometimes you want to get more in tune with it, or sort of make it more your own, or you know, quite know the correct terminology for it, but you want to delve in deeper, or you want to sort of leave something of yourself in that place. So this is where I am, and I've actually spoken to quite a few like-minded people who I've never mentioned this before. And you know, when I say about this church, they'll go, oh yeah, you know, that church is amazing, and we've got so many things, like got stone circle and forests and things, and so, and this church, I'm not quite sure if I have one here. I don't know if I've got the well. I know I don't have the well, but it's got a well as well, which is even older than the church itself. So it's just an amazing place, really. And that's where I am with my text. I think it works in very well with where I'm going at the moment, and you know, my love of particular the Welsh countryside and the mountains, and also that text that I've just shown you is Welsh, which would also be very interesting because it's Old Welsh. So it's you know, the whole Welsh language is really interesting. We're talking today about, you know, using language in a creative way, and I found often there's sort of differences of opinions for how Welsh should actually be written and spoken. So yes, hopefully that is going to be something, my way of sort of celebrating a very unique, beautiful place, and maybe allow other people to come up. We spoke yesterday about, you know, this celebration of these beautiful aspects of our natural environment. And hopefully by doing this artwork, more people can come up and appreciate it, and also appreciate the writing, and get some sort of a sense of identity with the place. And that's really where I am at the moment.